Okay, so we're recording now. Why don't you just tell me, like, what were you doing at the time in your life before you volunteered to go overseas?
I was currently working for a company called Pitney Bowes, just doing simple photocopies for lawyers and just generally office work. Nothing exciting, pretty mundane stuff.
So why did you volunteer to go overseas?
It's something that I wanted to do for a long, long time, and I finally had the opportunity to. I was at a point in my life where everything was stable enough, had a stable relationship, and the opportunity was, it couldn't have come at a better time for me. So I finally was able to say, yes, I want to go.
So when you said that, what did your family, friends, the person you're in a relationship with, what did they say about you going to Afghanistan?
Yeah. My fiance at the time, she was absolutely supportive over it. She had always pushed me to follow my dreams, to get the I can't think of it right now, to basically pursue my passions is what she really pushed me to do. And it was great. Family, they were very supportive. A lot of them knew it was coming. It was just a matter of time, because I'd always talked about it in such a way. And when I finally broke the news to them, like, hey, I got accepted, I'm going to be going, they're like, yeah, we knew it was about to happen. So it wasn't really a big shock.
So if you don't mind answering that again, so what did your family, friends, your fiance say when you told them you were going to Afghanistan?
Absolutely positive reception. My fiance always wanted me to follow my passions, and so she pushed me into this. She wanted me to, basically to get this over with, because I had been talking about it for so long. Friends and family, they had always known about it. So when I broke the news about him, it was a fairly positive reception. Of course, people were a little bit worried, but beyond that, everybody was like, have a good tour, go for it, man. We're so proud of you.
What was your expectation at the time? What did you think it was going to be like before you got there?
No idea. No idea at all. I had so many stories that I had heard from friends from their previous tours, and just really I tried to maintain a calm demeanor throughout the pre-workout, because I really had no idea what I was walking into. Like besides the temperature and the people, I knew nothing.
So tell me a bit about the workup training. So what did you do, where, with whom?
So workup training was up in Edmonton with 1st Service Battalion there. We only had about two and a half months of workup training. Usually you have about 6 months to even a year in some cases. They had purposely shortened that due to the prospect of the tour itself, to save money. And also they realized a lot of these pre-workups, which were lasting 6 months to longer, it was just a lot of redundant training that didn't need to happen. So they basically streamlined the process, had us working, like we had long days obviously, but we were ready to go within that time period, as opposed to being away for 6 months a year from family doing workup before even deploying.
So what did your training wind up being in that time then?
I was contracted, my job was going to be a convoy commander, so a lot of my work was just basically getting into the mindset of issuing orders for a convoy, learning how to be a convoy commander, directing the individuals and vehicles behind me, and if so need be in front of me, and what to do in certain scenarios. So that was what mainly my training focused on.
And when you look back at that, after your tour, how adequate was your workup training?
It was actually really adequate. I was really impressed with it, because the job that I trained for was the job I had overseas. Now, when I finally got overseas, there was already a sergeant in the convoy commander position, so I got dumped down to the 2IC point. And that was actually great, because that gave me an opportunity to be the driver, the commander on some missions, and to do everything that I could. So I learned a lot, but I actually stayed within the scope that I trained with.
We talked a bit about your expectations, like what it might be like, but what were your hopes? Like your personal hopes, what did you hope you were going to get out of this tour?
I really just wanted to help. I guess it's odd to say that, but I'm a big fan of always protecting the little guy, and I always feel there's a lot of people over there that they're the little guy, they're getting bullied, they're getting pushed over, and I wanted to go over there with the sole purpose of helping, not only helping my brothers in the Canadian Armed Forces, but helping these Afghani individuals there who just weren't able to protect themselves. So that was a big push for me.
What are your, when you hit the ground, what are your first impressions of the country, the people, smells?
It was an entirely different world when we hit the ground. The descent in the airplane itself was fast and furious and completely dark. So like I was white knuckling my seat the entire time. We landed and it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's still dark outside. You got out the back of the airplane there and it was just, the smell was, not pleasant at all. You can smell the feces in the air, I guess is the best way to describe it. And it was hot, it was humid, and I was like, wow, what am I walking into here? And they all shuffle us into this hangar. We have no weapons, no flak vest, no nothing, and you feel incredibly vulnerable. I've never felt that vulnerable before in my life.
And just to be clear, is this Kabul where you're landing?
Yeah, in Kabul.
Okay. And then, and so I missed it, is this nighttime or daytime?
It was 4 in the morning.
Okay. So what about when the sun comes up and you can see what the city looks like?
So the first thing I noticed when the sun came up was immediately all the loudspeakers in Kabul were the prayers. It was a very ominous feeling, like you had these all over the place. Like it's the same thing you see in the movies, right? You didn't expect that, but it was loud and it was almost creepy in a way, is the best I could describe it, but it wasn't off-putting either. So you hear that and you're like, well, you're in a whole different world, like what have I gotten myself into?
And where did you where did you go from there? Where did your accommodations, where were you based out of?
So we immediately there, I do believe we were in North Kaya was where the airplane had landed. We had temporary accommodations in a little bunks and looked like a modified H hut. And after that, they bussed us with the convoys had picked us up later on. It was Upper Armor Toyotas, they picked us up, and then we went over to Camp Phoenix. Camp Phoenix is where we were finally outfitted with all our kit. We got our rifles, flak vests, and everything we needed. And that was done fast and furious in the sun. I think it was like plus 35 that day.
What did it feel like when you come in and you're being transported and you're not armed? Did you feel vulnerable at all?
Oh, absolutely, I felt vulnerable. I was always like looking at the window, looking left and right, looking at everybody. Everybody just looked suspicious to me, and it was crazy that the traffic there, like there is no such thing as traffic laws in Kabul. They drive how they want to drive. So you'll be driving down, you'll have an individual selling sunglasses on his back, walking across the street. Meanwhile, buddy driving the bus full of people is going the wrong way in traffic. And everything is just completely disorganized, but nobody's hitting each other. It's a disorganized organization. It was weird.
Tell me about, so what are the accommodations like at Phoenix? Like where you're living, where you're working, recreation facilities, security?
So Phoenix, we were only there for about 2 days. We slept in the same bunk beds you sleep in here. They were the exact same setup. It was a massive hangar that we were in, and we were basically near the center of the camp. I remember the very first night that I slept in Phoenix, because after flying for 2 days, and I didn't sleep in the airplane at all. Either a mixture of just being nervous and just not being comfortable enough. And so I was dead. I was asleep that first night in Phoenix. And I remember waking up at about 6 o'clock in the morning because near the front gate of Camp Phoenix, a car bomb had gone off. Like the entire place vibrated and shuddered to the loud noise. I remember shooting up out of bed, looking at everybody, being directed to stay in the bed, and just going right back to sleep. It was like it didn't faze me. Like I had no idea where I was. I was so confused.
Okay, so where do you wind up going to, like, for your actual doing the job that you're supposed to do?
My job was based out of Camp Eggers. It was a smaller camp near the north side of Kabul itself. What was nice about it, it's actually one of the few camps that had trees, so there was actually shade in the camp. It looked like a modified village. It looked like, like there were apartments there before, but the buildings were so small, they were handmade. So you had to, at least for somebody as tall as me, you had to duck underneath to get inside the office, get your briefings and your missions, duck back out. It was like, almost like an Ewok village is the best way to describe it.
When you say they're handmade, is this like the mud, like Adobe style building?
Yeah, like it was brick laden, but you can tell it was all done by hand. There was no measuring, no architecture. It was just, it was done in the old style. So,
tell me about when you started doing your job. What's it like as you start going on convoys and things like that?
So the job for me started pretty much 4 days into me being deployed right away. The main job was to transport either VIPs or teachers who had to go to the ANA, so the Afghan National Army, or the Afghan National Police, their own bases there, and we'd be instructing them, coaching and everything we need to do. And so our job was to transport the instructors there and back, or any VIPs there and back. So on a technicality there, you could say we were leaving the wire, is like, let's say, basically 2 to 3 times a day. Sometimes more, sometimes we, depending on the conditions and the safety, not once a week. So it was never the same thing every single day. But we started right away with convoys.
And how confident were you once you started doing your job?
The first day, obviously not confident at all. I had no idea what I was walking into. I had the training behind me, so I had a semblance of an idea. But we were taking over for the other roto there, and they had their own way of doing things. So my job, the first responsibility I wanted to do is immediately know how they were running things, so I didn't mix things up, make sure safety was predominantly the first thing we were looking after, and to ensure that I had all the information I needed to do a successful convoy. So I spent a lot of time in front of that computer just reading everything over and over and over again. That first week was a lot of rehearsals, and then by the time the second week rolled around, and the third week, you were comfortable in the job. I knew what I had to do, and it just became almost like a routine.
What was the security? What were the security concerns at the time? I mean, you mentioned the attack on Camp Phoenix. What were you worried about at the time?
So with Kabul, there's a lot of paved roads, so you're still looking for IEDs and anything like that, but it wasn't a predominantly large factor. The biggest thing is we were still getting rocketed every now and then. It wasn't a constant attack. It'd be like every now, I guess once every 2 weeks or so, something would happen. So it was often enough not to become complacent, but not often enough where you were scared to leave your camp. Sometimes you wouldn't have any effects, and this was happening right during I forget what the actual religious holiday is, when they're fasting.
Ramadan.
Yeah, Ramadan. So we were there right in the middle of Ramadan. I remember because the traffic was so heavy the first couple of days I was there, and then suddenly it just died out. The roads were empty. You have a couple of pedestrians walking. It was just eerily quiet. And then after Ramadan was done, just back to busy again.
It's one thing to be like when you first went out there, you told me your first impressions about the chaotic, organized chaos, right? What's it like though when now you're in charge of a convoy or have a leadership role to get this convoy through that kind of traffic? How stressful was that?
It was very stressful, but it was a good kind of stressful. It woke me up. Like I didn't need a coffee or energy drink before I left on a convoy. Like I was ready to go. It was almost exciting to say it because you have everything. You're ready to go. You're locked. You're loaded. And you're on this convoy and you take charge. And so you are the priority on the road for the first time ever. You're the one, cutting across, making sure you're ahead of line, not getting broken up, not letting anybody into your convoy. You almost have this, you feel powerful in a way. We had these massive antennas. They were like the shape of basically these long cylinders about the height of my body on the back of the vehicle. So even though we tried to disguise ourselves in the traffic, we still stood out a little bit, but they were jamming technology so that any radio set IEDs couldn't be set off with them. They jammed them. And of course, in the back of the vehicle, you hear that machine whirring up and it sounds like almost like a lawnmower in the back of your vehicle. And it was good. You felt you had this false sense of security the entire time. Now, of course, if the machine wasn't always reliable, every now and then it would just stop working, either because the crypto wasn't on, or they had changed the crypto without telling us, or because just simply there was an electrical malfunction. So you have these bubbles of protection. So you made sure whichever jammer stopped working, you get that guy in the middle of the convoy so that he's still covered with the bubbles. So then you really start looking around and sweating a little bit more. But you maintained, the training stayed the same the entire time. You maintained your arcs. The guys in the back maintained their arcs, and we always spoke about everything. You cross a bridge or an overhead passageway where pedestrians were, which the kids love to throw rocks at us, by the way. That was really fun. It was really a great way to get scared. So we had to make sure we washed out, make sure a rock was just a rock and nothing else. And we knew everything. We had a couple of the individuals there. One I remember in particular, it was a midget. And he loved to hide in the potholes on the road, in the middle of the road. I kid you not. So he would see us driving, and he would jump in the pothole and wave at us like he was like a comedian. He loved us. But the fucker would hide in the pothole, so we're trying not to drive him over.
Never heard that before. What about you're in labs at the time?
No, just up armored Toyotas. So like the RAV4 or the bigger SUVs there, and we had the armor plating, the bulletproof glass. Like the doors were heavy enough to close, but that was it. Sometimes we'd have the American Suburbans. So like you see in the movies where they're convoying the president, like the same vehicle.
So you haven't got a gunner up top in these vehicles, okay. What about how are relations between regular force and reserves on this deployment for you? Did you notice a difference?
There's only one instance I noticed a difference, not so much in camp life, but in my section itself. I had a couple of Reg Force guys, and one in particular had a very sore spot on a reservist taking the spot of a regular force member. Of course, his close buddies didn't get on the tour, and he felt it was wrong that somebody who was in the Army part-time got to take his spot. So he made a point of reminding me several times about his opinions on the matter.
But you're the section commander. You took the spot, basically?
I was Section 2IC. I was trained as section commander, and I was still in the leadership position. But again, he didn't feel that I was his leader anyway. It took me about 3 weeks to earn his respect. Yeah.
Is there a day that stands out for you for good reasons?
Absolutely. It happened close to 9/11. I can't remember if it was a couple of days before or after, but the Afghan soccer team had just made the World Cup. So this was in the middle of the night, and I was working out at the gym at the time, and suddenly the sirens had went off. So I grabbed my badge, I grabbed my pistol, me and the section commander there, Edward Zazerski, sergeant, and we started running back because the drill was you immediately, we stored our rifles where our convoys were parked. You had your pistol on you at all times. So we started running towards our rifles because that's where your flak vest was, your tac vest and everything else. And because the Afghans were celebrating by firing their rifles into the air. So literally it looked like fireworks, like it was just streaming everywhere. You see the tracers in the sky, and the sky completely lit up. So like fireworks, except they're bullets. And so we're running back. We're sitting there in the camp. I'm sitting like I got shorts on, PT shirt, fully decked out with my rifle ready to go. It was just the most surreal experience, and we sat there and we waited for about an hour and nothing happened, and finally we got the call. The alarms went down and to relax. It turned out, and I don't know if this is verified or not, but apparently one Canadian got hit by a ricochet bullet in his calf. So I don't know whether that actually happened or not, but I know we had a good chuckle at the idea of getting that extra money.
What about incidents while you're doing your convoy runs? Anything aside from the midget and the potholes?
The biggest incidents we had, the issues we had, was actually with the Afghan National Army. They were the biggest hindrance to everything. They're not supposed to be, right? We're there to help them out. But a lot of these guys weren't getting paid. Now, what happens when a soldier like that is away from his family for a long time and they're not getting paid? Well, they get a little antsy and they start targeting us, the Canadians, the Americans, the UK guys, everybody, because they felt like, well, we're here, we're getting paid, why can't they get paid? So they would predominantly do it, like their mission was to make our life miserable until they got their money. So they would stop us prematurely, they would try to search the vehicle, and obviously our SOPs were not to allow them to open the vehicle doors. They couldn't because the doors locked automatically, but they would start yanking the doors open, they would start screaming for money. We had one incident, and I wasn't on that convoy, but one of my section mates, because he was on that convoy, where an individual from A&A actually had the AK-47 pointed at him, tried breaking the window and tried threatening him out. Now they got out of there immediately because the guy didn't shoot anything, but we had a vehicle, we can just run him over. We didn't run him over, but he jumped out of the way because the SOPs are, if that situation arises, GTFO, not to cause a fight. That got reported up to the chain of command, and that soldier obviously lost his job the next day. Like, it happened pretty fast, and the chain was pretty responsible for that. And the Afghan National Army, the higher ups there, they have no time for that because they're trying to foster positive relations with the rest of us. But that was the biggest thing. It was about a week or two there where we just kept on getting stopped for stupid reasons, for nothing at all, where we would go to drop off somebody to go on their HLTA there by North Kaya, and it's just always an issue, always, oh yeah, no, we have to search you like everybody else. Well, no, sorry, we're an armored vehicle, we're Canadian, you know who we are, we have permission to get going. And it took about 2 weeks there before they finally stopped with their crap.
So are they looking for just a handout, or are they almost on a strike action? You know what I mean? Like when union workers are looking to raise a fuss, what do you think it was?
They were just looking for money. They just assumed we were making serious money over there, and they wanted it. Now, I don't know if they knew this, but almost nobody carries cash on them, but they wanted cash, always. And not just them, the kids too. The kids were crazy. we would be in the middle of a roundabout, and if we were slow enough, they would run up to the vehicle, jump on, and hold on to the rear view mirror there, or the side view mirror, and they wouldn't let go until like kilometers later. They would just be begging for money, just like this. And like you'd feel bad because you're like, oh, I don't want to hurt this kid, but you have to keep going. So you slow down a little bit, and you keep saying, no, 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 I don't want my window washed. But the kid would just hold on. Like this one held on for about 5 kilometers before he finally got tired and jumped off. But that's what we dealt with. It was nothing immediately scary or dangerous, but there was a lot of people just begging constantly for money or handouts or food, or just that we were positive. They loved us, but they wanted more all the time.
What were you told in terms of the policy, in terms of giving any kind of handout to the Afghans? Was there a policy on that?
No, no. Like, sorry, there was a policy, but no, we never were to give out anything like that. There was a very strict policy on not giving away money, not giving away food or water, because they really didn't want us to be bogged down in missions by the public just running up to us looking for handouts. Like, we had a job to do to deliver these individuals safely and to get back safely. And we can't do that if we're stopping every 5 minutes to give food or water. So there were several other side missions, I guess you could say, to deliver food. We would go to orphanages on days off and deliver food or help them build the orphanage up, or the daycares. Like, we were doing social work like that all the time. But when it came to the mission obviously was priority: get to point B, get back home safe.
What's it like stepping out from that and going on your HLTA? And then just that sort of transition from Afghanistan to wherever you went.
HLTA actually was surprisingly easy for me to just get out of that mindset. It was completely scary though when I was sitting at that Afghanistan airport, and the airplane ride itself was something else, because buddy next to me thought it'd be a great time to like clip his toenails right next to me with his, no man, his feet just smelled like something else. And I just kept my mouth shut because I'm like, I'm getting out of here, I'm getting out of here. And then I get over to Dubai, and Dubai, I'm like, okay, I'm out. The first thing we did, because there was about 4 or 5 of us, we went straight to the Irish pub in Dubai and paid for $10 a beer. It was the most expensive tab I've ever had in my life, but that beer tasted amazing, because you don't drink when you're deployed. And so it was nice, it was cool, refreshing. And after you got your first beer, like, okay, I'm back in civilization again. I can relax a little bit. So for me, the break between the first 2 or 3 months there in my HLTA, I found that easy. Not so much at the end of the tour, but that little break in between. And I went to Europe for that HLTA. I got together with my fiance, and we just went through Amsterdam, the UK, London, France, Rome. Like, we toured everything with the Euro rail, and we had a great time.
And then what was it like when you have to leave her or put her on the plane and you're going back to Kabul?
Because of her work, she had to leave 1 day early, so that left me basically with a day alone. We were in Germany at the time, so this was just the tail end of Oktoberfest. So we definitely enjoyed the local beverages. I took her to the airport, we said goodbye. That was pretty difficult, mostly because I still had a day left in my HLTA by myself. Now, that sucked. Like, you had that great 2 weeks. If I was alone by myself at the beginning of HLTA, that would have been fine, but at the tail end of it, it felt lonely, incredibly lonely. So instead of exploring the town and everything, I just basically, for the majority of my last day, just sat in my hotel room watching movies. I just didn't have the energy to do anything. And I was just excited. Like, I just wanted to get back so I could be back with my buddies again, back on the mission, so I could just do something.
What's the tail end of the mission like for you? Any excitement? Anything out of the ordinary?
No, it wasn't very exciting. It was slightly demoralizing, because you could tell like the money was running out for the tour. So we had fresh rats for the most of it, and suddenly the messes, the defects, would stop having these nice meals. We got spoiled at the beginning. The very first couple of weeks I was in Kabul, we had like steak and lobster dinners. We had pizzas. We had Mongolian grill night. Like, they spoiled the hell out of us. And then by the last couple of weeks, it was some sort of meat substitute patty that they would slice up for you. It was like the meat you get at Arby's. Like, they would slice it up for you. It didn't look like real meat, but it was something. It was protein. Breakfast was just like eggs and a couple of veggies. You could tell like they just didn't have the money to spend on that food anymore. And if I had managed to stay there longer, we would have gone back to rations. So everything was being cut back. The camp was being closed, and you could tell it was being closed. The maintenance stopped, and people were pulling back. They were pulling out of it.
And like just people's attitudes, how did that kind of wind down? How was that reflected in people's approach to their jobs? Or
it depended on the individuals. Unfortunately, there were quite a few individuals there who went there simply for the medal. That's all they cared about. They wanted their 30 days, the medal, and then they made no attempt at hiding the fact they just wanted to go back home. So there are a lot of, I guess the assholes is the best way to describe them, who just wanted to go back home. And the rest of us, we wanted to stay. We wanted to carry on the mission. We really loved what we were doing. We believed in the mission. We also loved the fact that we were helping. It's one of those rare situations where you see the end effect of the work you're putting into it. So you see the positive reactions from the kids. You see the positive reaction from the adults. It was really sad to leave them. And as everything was being shut down, it was just getting slower and slower. Like, I know I started losing my appetite. I didn't want to leave. I did everything I could to stay on longer. In the end, I managed to get an extra month in Kuwait, but I didn't want to leave. I wanted to keep going. I really believed in the mission.
How long were you in Afghanistan?
So I was in Afghanistan. I deployed June 29th. I got in Camp Phoenix on Canada Day, and I think it was mid-October, I deployed to Kuwait.
Yeah, so you said you wanted to go to help, right? You wanted to help the little guy, the underdog. So how did you feel as you sort of see things winding down and basically the troops are starting to pull out?
I didn't feel good about it. I wanted to stay, and like our interpreters wanted us to stay. The locals that did our laundry, that cleaned our floors, like these guys were all super cool dudes. They were doing their best to learn English. A couple of our guys were just basically spending extra time with them, teaching them English. They all wanted to come home to Canada with us too. Like it was sad. You couldn't take them with you, obviously, but you wanted to.
I mean, did you feel that? In the bigger picture, did you feel that NATO was kind of leaving them in a lurch? How would you describe those feelings?
Sorry, say again?
Did you feel that NATO as a whole was kind of walking away and leaving them in a bit of a lurch? Was it that kind of a feeling?
I felt like Canada was, because the Americans were still sticking around. They weren't in a rush to leave. The UK guys were in no rush to leave. Australia was still there. The Netherlands were still there. It was just like Canada was like, all right, we're done. See you guys. Bye.
So you leave there. I don't know, is there anything between going from there to Kuwait? Any sort of, how did that work out?
So the biggest thing with leaving Kabul to go to Kuwait was the danger immediately goes to almost nothing. It was Kuwait, I like to think of as like Dubai's little brother. It's the same atmosphere, very religious, but very relaxed. People just love to buy their sports cars there. They have their expensive tastes. And you go from Kabul, where everybody's driving a Toyota. I swear to God, I never saw a different make or model ever. But you go from that, fully armored, you've got your weapon on, you feel you have this sense of security on you because you're protected. If anything happens, you can protect yourself, at least to some semblance of it. To Kuwait, no pistol, no rifle. You're back in the garrison feeling of things, because your job in Kuwait was just to transport everything from Kabul back to Canada. You would check the vehicles out, you would pick them up from the airport, clean them out, get them up to inspection standards, and then off they go. So it was a very weird transition period, because I didn't like how relaxed everybody was. Everybody was taking their time, walking slowly, and it just irked me.
Can I just be clear? So when you left Kabul, did you leave with like the last of the Canadians?
The last of the Canadians, actually, no. I was the second last to leave from Kabul. We still had a couple of the higher ups. Mostly you had your majors and above who stayed behind, and a couple of warrant officers and MWOs and chief warrant officers that would stay behind just to finish off whatever it was they were doing over there. But for the most part, the majority of the troops were coming home in October. That was when everybody was coming home. And instead of coming home, I managed to go to Kuwait. So they were the first ones to leave. Out of the last roto, it was 3 waves of people coming back to Canada. They were the first wave. The second wave was me when I came home in December. And the third wave, they came home, I think I was either February or March the next year.
2014.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else were you doing in Kuwait and for that final month?
I really didn't get to do as much. The job that I thought I was entering Kuwait, like the convoy commander job, was a very different kind of convoy commander. We still had our Toyotas that I was driving, but it was no longer up armored. It was just your regular old fast Toyota. And it was just driving back and forth constantly at the airport. Either you'd be directing the large semi-truck drivers back into camp and back out again, because you had to be the escort for them at all times. But that was it. That's all we did. If there wasn't a transport that day, there was a lot of doing nothing, just walking around camp, being on your phone through the Wi-Fi, talking to people back home. But there was long stretches of boredom in Kuwait. It was almost unbearable. I know a couple of guys who came to Kuwait with me who really wanted to stay on the tour. Once after a week in Kuwait, like, okay, I'm done. I want to get out of here. This is boring.
So, pardon me, when you finally get to head home, do you do it via Cyprus?
Yes, yeah, we had a 3-day stop in Cyprus.
So tell me about that. What did you do in Cyprus?
So Cyprus was great because it's your decompression, right? So you go through your briefings, you talk about healthy ways to decompress, you talk about the unhealthy signs, and then we do like what everybody else does, and we drink our faces off. We get into the wine, the beer. I know that first night we went to a pizza joint down the street, and I had so many beers. And by so many, I mean 3 is all it took to get me drunk, because your body just wasn't used to it anymore. And we just walked. Me and a couple of friends there, we just did all the tours, right? So we did the snorkeling, we did the local food tours. We really wanted to get the most out of it. So there was never a point in time where I just stayed in the hotel room drinking. We went on and socialized as best we could, as safely as we could with, you know, the way things are there, the whiskey girls and everything.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of people that want your money.
Yeah, constantly. We were well briefed about, you know, the whiskey girls. And for those who don't know who whiskey girls are, these are girls who would come up to you and be like, "You want to buy me a drink?" They would hit on you, and you know, if you were a single guy, like that was a great opportunity. And before you know it, this girl, you would bring you your tab, and they wouldn't charge you like, you know, your typical Canadian or American prices for a drink. You'd think like a shot of whiskey would be $6 or $12. No, suddenly it'd be like $200 for a shot. So you'd have a tab of $800. And the bouncer wouldn't let you leave until you paid it. So he would literally sit over you with a pistol in his holster until you drew all your money out of your ATM machine and gave it to them, and then let you leave. It was this amazing scam, and you were too drunk, you were too alone to get out of it. You were too stupid because you walked into that situation because you were lonely. And I guess stupid isn't the right word, but you were misguided. You trusted the wrong individual. So they briefed us on that because it had happened to individuals before who had their entire bank accounts emptied by these whiskey girls.
How valuable do you think that stopover in Cyprus was, in terms of you, as opposed to you coming straight home from Kuwait?
Extremely valuable. We've all joked about it before we went to Cyprus, saying, well, this is so that we don't come back home and beat our wives. Because there's a history of that, a very dark history, but it's important to have that ability to just get that partying out of your system before you come back home, because you don't want to be that guy that just sits at the bar when you first come home after like a 4, 5, 6 month, 1 year deployment, because you want to see family, you want to socialize with them, you want to be relaxed, I guess is the best way it is, to shake off that need to be in that army mode at all times. So I thought it was extremely valuable because it allowed everybody to just blow off steam, get that anger out of them. There were so many things available, like massages, counseling. If you had anger issues, everything was available to you, and most of it was reimbursed afterwards as well. So it was just a really great thing, I find.
Some people have said to me that they gave you extra money when you got to Cyprus. Do you remember that? Do you get like a...
I think when they talk about you get the extra money, you get extra money back. Like, you're still spending it out of your pocket. They don't give you like $800 and like, here you go, have fun. Like, it's still your money you're spending. You just get that money back when you're done with your paperwork.
So how did you actually come back to Canada? Like, and what happened on your arrival here?
So when we got back, we stopped, I think it was, I can't actually remember, but we finally, like, with several stops in Canada, and then we landed in Edmonton. When we landed in Edmonton, like, it was very weird because it was just during a freak snowstorm. So it was like -30. I just gone from +25 to -30 in less than a day there. And I had no jacket, no nothing. So I just had my arid combats. That was it. They immediately go through the terminal. We do our paperwork, we do our customs, all that, because all of us brought back either olive oil from Cyprus or vodka or whatever drinks they are, and candies and everything else. And we did that. So we would finish our paperwork, get back in line, and the bus took us from the airport all the way back to the Edmonton base there. But the base, the bus had a convoy. We had an escort, a police escort. So the entire road was completely empty, and every single intersection we had firemen and police saluting us as we went by and saying like, welcome back. And that was crazy. I mean, we also had the Hornet escort with the airplane on the way back. It was just, it felt like you did a really great job. So even though in the back of my head, I'm like, well, I don't feel like I did such a great job that I deserve this, because I wanted to do more. I thought there was more I could have done. At the same time, I'm like, well, this is really cool. This is amazing. Like, I took photos, I looked outside, and to see all these police officers and firemen and public servants saluting us, I mean, that was heartfelt beyond belief. Like, I know it choked up a lot of people on the bus, but at the same time, we're driving really slowly. We're only going like 60 kilometers an hour. Can we get going, please? So we finally get to Edmonton base. We unload, all of us get back. We get back to the same gym where we deployed from. So sometimes some people had family waiting for them. Some people had coworkers or friends waiting for them. And you get your cheerful hellos and everything. And then everybody leaves. Yeah.
So then you leave. What's that transition like, going from soldier to civilian again?
It was odd. Like, that first night, I actually told my wife not to meet me there, because we live in Calgary, so that was a long drive in that snowstorm to go up to Edmonton just to drive back down. And my car was stored there in Edmonton anyways. So I told her, don't meet me there. I'll come home and meet you at home. And so it was kind of sad, because I was alone. Everybody's getting these hellos and hellos, and nobody was there. My surprise at the time, though, was my CO actually had driven all the way up there despite the snowstorm to say hi to me and make sure I was okay. So, I mean, that was huge of him. I didn't expect that at all. My CO and our new warrant officer, Warren Herman, first time I met the guy, but he was there to say hi to me as well. So at least I had somebody there. And then another buddy of mine, Ben Stewart, like, I hadn't seen the guy in a long time. Like, he had found out that day I was coming back home. And so he worked out of Edmonton, and he stayed that night so he could say hi to me. And he actually drove me to my car and everything and made sure I was okay, which was good, because it was minus 30. I was shivering the entire time. I had a ton of baggage with me. So having that extra help with me was great. First night, I think it was 10 o'clock at night, and I was like, I'm not staying in this base one night longer. I want to go home. So yeah, I drove 80 kilometers per hour home the entire way, because the car was sliding. I only had all seasons on. Weather temperature was terrible, and I was freezing my butt off the whole time, but screw it, I was going home. And I made it home safely. I walked in at about 1 o'clock in the morning finally, and I saw my wife, and we had our hellos, and it was great. And I finally fell asleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was wide awake 6 o'clock in the morning the next day. I'm like, okay, what do I have to do now? Said hello to my family, relaxed, went into town. This is December. That was a big mistake, because December, everybody is shopping. So I just went from a very quiet area, very few people, plus 25, to malls completely bustling, people doing Christmas shopping, minus 30 outside. And I'm wondering, where's my pistol? Where's my rifle? I feel very unsafe. That guy's acting weird. That guy's acting weird. I'm getting anxious. I'm getting angry. I'm getting flustered. I have to leave.
Did those emotions, did they surprise you that you would feel that way?
I thought I had a better grasp on it than I did. I was overconfident in my ability to control my emotions. I know I would snap at very small things like, why didn't anybody clean the cat's sand? Or why is there a pile of laundry here? Like, little things that never bothered me before suddenly started bothering me. And I was very easily irritable for that first week, second week, even like a month later. Like, it was very easy for me to just go from 0 to 100 when it came to my emotions and just get really angry at things I couldn't control. So, it took a lot of talking. My wife knew this was going to happen, so we talked through it. And of course, we had at least 2 good fights that entire December. But we talked it through, and she was fantastic. She had like the patience of an angel. Like, never ever did she blame me or anything, but she did force me to talk to her. And so I did that, and I told her what set me off and why it set me off, and we worked through it. And Over time, it took me about a month, you know, a while, but long enough for me to realize, at least to self-realize what was setting me off, and I would control that. And over time, it became easier and easier. And luckily for me, or unluckily, depending on how you feel about it, I had my wedding to plan at the same time. So that took my mind off everything else.
Ultimately, how satisfying was this tour for you?
I don't even know if satisfying is the right word. It was something I needed to do, and I still need to do. Like, if I can go back, I absolutely would. It's something I believe in. So I don't know if satisfying is the right way, because there was no satisfaction. There was just this empty feeling at the end of it, and I'd love to just go back and finish what I started.
Go back to Afghanistan. So what does that mean, finish what you started? What would you want to go back and do or help with?
Just continue the work and make sure those guys are okay, and continue with the humanitarian work, the orphanage building, the everything, just the training. Like, I didn't feel that personally, the individuals in the ANA Army that we trained, we left them fully trained. I feel like we left them 3/4 trained, like almost up there ready, but still making the same mistakes. So, I mean, they're a great bunch of guys. They're hardworking soldiers, like hearts of gold, smiles on their faces whenever I talk to them, and I miss that.
How do you think that this experience changed or affected you as a person and as a soldier?
Well, as a person, it definitely put everything into perspective, and things that I used to hate or complain about completely changed. I no longer cared about those small little things, which is odd to say, because those small little things set me off in an angry way, but I didn't care about them in the same way anymore. It was easier for me to let go of things. Like, I no longer needed to get the latest iPad or get the newest computer. I was okay with what I had. So, I mean, as a person, it made me more content and happy to have what I had at home, because I saw these people and what little they went by through. And 6 months in their shoes, so to say, that was an eye-opener. Professionally, it really made me pay attention to the details more. So, especially when I was busy teaching basic themselves, I had more of an actual real-life experience to take with me when I was instructing these brand new soldiers, to tell them, like, hey, this isn't what you think it is. Like, you really need to pay attention to these drills, because they are going to save your lives. And I can tell you that for a fact, because I can tell you stories of what happened to people who didn't pay attention.
Is there, I mean, that's it for my question. Is there anything that we haven't talked about, or any aspect that you wanna cover? Anything further you want to say?
Nothing really that comes to mind. Like, it wasn't a very exciting tour. It was a meaningful one. Like, I fully believe in it, but it wasn't something they're ever going to make a movie out of. Mm-hmm. So it is what it is.
What if you? How do you think your wife would react if you went back home today and said, I'm going to Iraq. I've just volunteered to go to Iraq or somewhere else. How would she react for a second tour, do you think?
I'm lucky enough to have a wife that supports me in that aspect of my life. And it doesn't matter whether I tell her I've put my name in for Latvia to go there for 6 months, or if I go back to Iraq or wherever in the world it is. She stands behind me 100%, and that she's what pushes me forward. She's the reason why I keep doing this. Because if I didn't have her support, if I didn't have the support of my family, then I don't know if I'd be in this line of work. But with their support, I can push myself into these scary situations, these scary tours, and do what I feel I want or need to do.
So what do you think you will do in that regard?
I'd love to go back. I'd love to go to Iraq or even Latvia. Like, I've got my name in for op reassurance right now. So we'll see what happens, but I'm prepared for it.
And what are you doing on the civilian side?
The first thing I did when I came back from Afghanistan is I used that money I saved up and I went back to school. I went to SAIT and I finished my EMT certificate. So right now I'm working as an EMTU of Air and Paramedical Services. I'm trying to get a job with Alberta Health Services. No luck right now with that. It's really frustrating, actually. But beyond that, that's my current career goals, is to either work in health services as a paramedic in the future, or even looking into policing right now.
That's great. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.